25th, 2025 meeting. We're going to do a roll call. Brian?
Thank you, Dennis. Good morning, everyone. I will name the municipality. If a voting member present could please state their name. Ulster County.
Ed Pine.
City of Kingston.
John Schulteis.
Excuse me.
John, we see we did not hear you. We'll say John Schulteis. Thank you.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here.
Town of
You can hear
Saugerties.
me.
Leanne Thornton.
Is our audio on?
Mine is.
Well,
Anyone online just
Brian,
say
we hear
something?
anything?
John Schulteis.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Was it,
Leanne Thornton.
Thank you, Leanne. Good morning.
Morning.
Town of Ulster. New York State Department of Transportation.
Sandra Johnson.
New York State Thruway Authority.
Michael Bodette.
Town of Hurley. Town of Marlborough. Town of Shawngum. Village of New Paltz.
Mike Baden.
Town of Wawarsing. Town of Kingston. Town of Esopus.
We saw something.
No, that's just Supervisor Freer. She is not here. Town of Gardner.
Mary Beth's here.
One short.
Thank you. We are one short of a quorum. Dennis, do you have,
What we're going to do, since we're one short of the quorum, is we're going to go through the agenda, take the necessary votes that we can with those present, and then we'll ask members of the committee to vote by mail. We can do that under the rules, under the operating procedures, to sort of make through. And we only have, I think, one action item, as I recall.
yeah, and it's
Performance measures.
the action item before us is not time sensitive. I'll also say that.
All right. So with that, meeting's called to order. Roll call is complete. I'll have a call for citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments? Anybody online? Hearing none. Any comments from council members? Somebody have a comment. Happy Thanksgiving comment from a council member?
Happy Thanksgiving.
There we go. I got one comment. Thank you. Did someone else join, Chris?
No, it was someone was dropped and then came back in.
Okay, thank you. We'll do an approval of the September 2023-2025 Policy Committee meeting summary. I have a motion for approval.
I make the motion.
Mr. Pine, do I have a second?
I'll second it, Mike Baden.
Thank you, Mr. Baden. I have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried in the room. We'll wait for a vote on a non-present member to pass the minutes. Communications and announcements, Brian?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dennis. Everyone should have received a little transportation news and nuggets bulletin from UCTC about 1 or 2 weeks ago. The major announcement on that bulletin, from my perspective, is the announcement of the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program is open once again for the latest round. Applications are due. Do you recall, Chris?
March.
Yeah,
March.
out in March.
Or 6th.
The training seminars, webinars have not even been scheduled yet. So it is early in that process. Some notable points about transportation alternatives, as the name implies, the types of projects that are eligible are typically non-motorized transportation projects. Also safety and beautification projects like boulevards, and things that have mitigate environmental impacts from the transportation system on the environment. And a variety of other types of projects that can address safety concerns for the vulnerable road users, which would be bicyclists and pedestrians primarily. During this round, NISDOT saw fit to increase the total dollars available for applying from 5 million to 7 million, which is very important, especially considering the impacts that inflation have had on our ability to deliver projects. So that is a significant change as well. This is requires a 20% local match for all projects. So that's the big TAP announcement. Yes.
And you have right-of-way changes, right? We did find that out.
In reviewing the application materials, Sandra, when I looked at the section on right-of-way, it seemed a little more flexible than in years past, that it didn't, I recall in the guidance, it actively dissuading applicants if they had right-of-way. And in this instance, it seemed a little more flexible and open to the idea of right-of-way, recognizing that you're going, if you need right-of-way acquisition or you're unsure of the right-of-way for your project area, there's going to be strict scrutiny. And that much is clear.
Okay,
But
good.
it didn't seem quite as strict as the language as in years past.
Yeah. And the other piece that I think is worth noting is that, for communities that have a state highway running through them, if you want to propose, and sponsor, a project along that corridor, let's say putting sidewalks or improve, pedestrian crossings, whatever the project idea might be. Bring those project ideas, to my attention, my office, as soon as you can, because you will need, kind of like a sign off from our agency, and that is facilitated through, my office, the planning department. And on top of that, we will contribute to the match. So that type of project would only require 5%, I believe it's 5% from the municipality, 15% would come from the state, which makes up the 20%. And, yeah, so again, any of those types of ideas, please bring them to my attention as soon as possible so we can get that, additional review step going.
And we're gonna have that conversation with both the town and village of New Paltz, given the safety work that's been done in that area. And the second piece of that is the town of Rosendale as well, for that safety work there.
Okay. Good.
And that's more of a question than, do you think that's a TAP application, or would the department take on those safety improvements in and above it by itself?
No, I would highly encourage the municipalities, if that's a priority for them, to use this program as a means of getting those projects going and funded. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I would strongly encourage municipalities that have applied in the past, whose grants were unsuccessful, to reapply. As someone who reviews these applications, we do notice municipalities that are committed to a specific project and committed to improving the application. It does pay off. So, Town of Saugerties, Leanne, I would
Yes,
highly encourage you and your Transportation Advisory Committee and your town board to seriously consider resubmitting your 9W proposal.
we have that on the drawing board, and the big thing was for the rejection last year was because of all the right-of-ways. That seemed to be the holdup, because there was 30 to 35 right-of-ways that would be required. And when we called for the side path project, when we called and said, what was the major holdup? And that was what the problem was, so. But we definitely plan on resubmitting it.
I think the interesting thing with respect to that is that's on a state road, and the state right-of-way process would be a lot simpler than going through a local right-of-way acquisition. So if the state, that's a conversation I think you should have with the state, Leanne, and see whether or not they're willing to do right-of-way, which will greatly simplify the right-of-way and should change the review process in a positive way.
Well, it allows us access to eminent domain it's still, you know, from start to finish, a 24-month process,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's a lot simple.
Can I
Okay.
ask a question about what you just said, Dennis? What is the difference in right-of-way acquisition process if it's a local project versus state project?
The process literally is a payment process rather than essentially the negotiation process is much simplified. And the payment process is much simplified, and the eminent domain process is hugely simplified. If you have a non-participating landowner that doesn't want to participate, the state simply says you're participating, here's what we'll pay you. Right. Basically, as compared to what ends up happening, you have to have a finding statement, you have to go to court, you have to do all these other things at the local level. It really does simplify it somewhat drastically.
Thank you.
Brian, it's Mike Baden. For the Village of New Paltz work that the DOT has already indicated that they're going to take on in the next several years, is that something we should need to apply for, or is that something that's already on the books and doesn't need, you know, wouldn't need an application?
I think we really need a meeting of the mind and clarification on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's our understanding that the safety study that was done by NISDOT was these are the things that we would recommend. These are where the problem areas are. And I think it's collaborative, and the collaborative in this instance would be the village and the town working together on a TAP application with the state, and the state
Okay.
providing the necessary match, and perhaps any right-of-way acquisition work. I think that would be a really great thing to do. So my sense would be is that you should begin that conversation almost immediately with the state and working with us, and we'll be happy to help.
Okay, thank you.
The other municipality that I think will have a very strong application is the town of Woodstock. Has been working very closely with New York State DOT on the Route 213 culvert replacement project. And as part of that, DOT has offered significant resources and design services for some of the more aspirational components of bike and ped access on Route 213, which I say aspirational because it's a very long stretch of road with quite an expensive proposal. But having a design, I think, will go so far in that application.
I'm glad you're bringing that one up because I thought of that one too. So
Yeah.
that's another one, absolutely.
And of course, I know they're not here online, but I am very much having lots of dialogue with the town, their Complete Streets Advisory Committee, and we've been invited to the next project committee meeting associated with that New York State DOT project in December. So we'll attend that meeting at Town Hall and discuss it more. Even if the designs aren't complete by NISDOT, they should still apply, and that's what I'm going to encourage.
Absolutely, and really show consensus on what the community wants, even
Yeah.
and you know, and what I've seen happen in the past, timing is everything, is if in the Woodstock example, if that municipality applied and actually received the funding, because we have an active open New York State DOT project, the money could potentially just be added to that project and then final design done and let under one contract. So that's a very unique situation that happened to Sloatsburg, maybe 2 TAP cycles before. So timing sometimes can really be everything. So yeah, that's a big one.
That's great.
Yeah.
And we were not planning on applying for Washington Avenue again
Yeah, you don't.
because of the action on the tip.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was, I just want to clarify that as whether or not you thought we should apply it. And we're going to sit down with our DPW and go over any potential applications from the county level, but at this point in time, we haven't identified a really good candidate. We're certainly not looking at any additional trail projects at this time.
And it sounds like you got a lot of good projects already in the hopper. You know, it's very competitive. So, you know. Yeah.
The city of Kingston also has met to discuss a TAP application for this round on Lucas Avenue and the surrounding schools. So a safe routes to school type project.
Excellent.
John, if you proceed in that manner, let's us talk, because we have a multimodal grant to look at sidewalks past Stewart's. So we can come from, we may be able to come from the north of that, south into Stewart's, and if you come up from Forsyth Park, we could meet in the
Okay.
middle, so to speak.
Ross, your project would be in the town of Ulster?
That's
Town
correct.
Is that Ulster or Hurley
town of
there?
Ulster.
Yeah.
Yeah, town of Ulster.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you envision a joint application in that case?
That would
or-
be, I think would be really great, because I don't think I have enough money in the multimodal grant. I think I need about another 500 to $1 million in that grant. And then, we do have some right of way in there as well. But that would be a nice, it would be a stronger application.
Right.
Just so I understand, in a case like that, a multi-jurisdiction project, the city would have to provide a portion of the match, as would the town.
Well, the county, I think, would provide a portion of the match for some of the sidewalks. I'm not sure about in the city itself.
Okay, we'll talk offline.
Think of it this way, the jurisdiction of roads change. So the road jurisdiction outside the city is the county's road jurisdiction inside the city is the city's road. That's why I wouldn't think that we'd provide the match in the city.
10-4.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on the Transportation Alternatives Program? There'll be plenty more. Again, webinars have not been scheduled. Anyone interested in applying has to attend the webinar, someone from your municipality.
Is
Just
the
keep
dollar
that in
amount
mind.
region-wide? Or is it,
Statewide.
or just 7 million statewide?
No,
No.
that's the per project.
Oh,
You can, yeah, the maximum
Yeah.
per project. I don't know what the,
Yeah, did they announce in how much? would be
it
available?
might be in the guidelines
Yeah.
somewhere what
It's-
each region has received.
I thought
That's usually
statewide,
goes.
it's in the range of 90-95 million.
There you go. Yeah, it's usually statewide. Okay.
Thanks, John.
So that's TAP. The next item is the under communications and announcements, the route optimization plan we held our final public meeting on November 6th. Earlier this month, that was held at the Rupco building. We held two sessions, one at 4 and 6 p.m. They were both remote and in person. I would say those were very successful. We had nearly 60 attendees overall across the two sessions, and quite a bit of input and interaction. The route optimization plan is on the agenda for a brief presentation and overview later on, so we'll get into more detail on that project in just a few moments. The deadline for public comments is December 7th for the route optimization plan, and we are on track for project completion at the end of this year. So more to come on route optimization. Along UCAT lines, we also have Amanda Lavelle here, Deputy County Executive, who is a liaison to our Ulster County Area Transit System. And there have been several very well-received presentations that UCAT has provided the public on its multi-year effort toward fleet electrification. Chris, can you share the folder or the flyer so people online can see? Amanda, did you have anything you wanted to add maybe on the UCAT fleet electrification
I
process?
think there's a particular, it's a big project. It's been many years. So I don't know if you have something.
Just a
very high level.
high level is fine, yeah.
Jared's gonna join us, right?
Yeah, he's not here until 10:30. It's 10:25.
UCAT is currently operating 5 full-size electric buses in their fleet, along with 3 smaller e-transits. So for a total of 8 totally electric vehicles. And since about 2019, 2020, we've been working on various plans, some in conjunction with Public Works, some in conjunction with the Planning Department, to improve the facility, the transit, the area transit kind of garage and office area, building, in order to be able to charge as many buses as we can with existing infrastructure. We kicked off with phase 1, 2020 to 21. This was primarily done in conjunction with the New York Power Authority, and that was because initial money for bus procurement was available through DEC-VW settlement money. So we knew we were going to use some of that money for bus. We were also able to use some of that for charging infrastructure. And we were able to do some significant upgrades to the transformer in order to, make sure that we would have basically as much service as we really could kind of receive at that location from Central Hudson to build out our charging infrastructure, but knowing that we would do that in phases. So we were able to receive some significant support from Central Hudson through their Make Ready work, which is where they basically pay for improvements like up to and including like the transformer, so line upgrades, transformer upgrades. And then we're able initially to install 3 power cabinets. On the front page of this handout, there's a picture of those, the new install of the power cabinets, which is actually 4. Also, our county executive, when she was in the state Senate, had secured some funding to help put solar on the roof of UCAT. So we ensured when we were doing in that phase 1 scope that the electrical interconnections were all kind of ready for that solar system. That allowed the initial rollout of the buses. Phase 2 started in 2022. We continued working with NYPA, which is it's a New York State agency. It has some different, they're able to do project management. They kind of do the bidding and the procurement. So we had a master contract in place with them. It's a unique relationship that a municipality can engage with NYPA in that way. And what we were able to do there was then build out the infrastructure to, again, take advantage of those new transformers and all our new equipment. So we currently have 4 power cabinets. We have a capability to plug in 12 buses at a time. We can't charge all 12 of those at one time, but they're able to just kind of sequentially go through the buses. So if they're all plugged in, they kind of go from the first bus to the second bus to the third bus. They take about 2 hours now to kind of top off a bus, at least to 80%, which is not bad. We've now, with our 5 buses, we just got 2 Gilligs. We initially had bought 3 new Flyers, and the technology is increasing quickly enough that now we're getting over 300 miles of range on a Gillig, which really can serve any of our routes in the county, even the more rural routes that are running up and down 28. And it's worked pretty well. So you'll have a bus driver can come in and take a lunch break, plug it in, get almost 80% charge or get a significant charge and go back out on the road. So we had done some initial work, planning work to look at what routes were the best ones to electrify first versus second, and also trying to look at if electrifying our fleet would require just more buses for the whole charging, because of the charging needs. If you can only cover, the first shift and not the second shift, that does, change your capital need, which is a significant increase in cost. However, what we're seeing with the newer technology is that we can kind of stretch those out, with those longer ranges through the day with some short additional charging. We also went up to a 400 kW emergency backup generator for the facility, which is a very large generator. And that was done so that we could ensure that if there were a multi-day power outage, that we would be able to charge 3 buses at a time, just to make sure, because you never really know, and we want to make sure that we have all that infrastructure, all that all the buses operational if there is an event. The solar has been working really well. You know, it's certainly not enough solar to cover the electrical demands of like an entire electric bus fleet, but it's certainly helping with the production. And you know what else?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, that's
perfect.
kind of the, it's a great garage facility. We'd love to have people there if they want to check it out. We actually had some folks from DOT. I think.
DOT visited from the region.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to mention. There was, what was the Statewide Association of Conservation Boards, had a conference in Kingston, and they, UCAT offered a tour of the facility, which I think was very well received. And then most recently, we did have a meeting with the Director of Public Transit of New York State DOT. That was a business meeting, but we were able to also offer a tour of the facility as well. Will Califano just gave an excellent overview of the facility and all the upgrades that have been made. And they were very impressed with it, as was I. So thanks, you.
Brian. So I'm gonna get Amanda off the hook a little bit.
Sure.
Jared Troops is here today from the route optimization plan. So that's item B on your agenda, an update on that plan. So I'm gonna ask Jared if he would willing to give us a short presentation on the nuts and bolts of the plan that was presented to the public, and that is in front of the county. Depending upon the number of comments that we receive, it will be in front of the county for implementation. Jared, I know you're here.
Yes, can the host give me, oh, I think I need screen sharing. Nope, there it is. Perfect.
Morning, Jared. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Am I sharing the right screen? Should be the same slide deck as before.
Yeah, we can see it. Floor is
Perfect.
yours.
Great. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to go through the slide deck that we showed the public at some open houses we had about 2-3 weeks ago. A large part of this slide deck are route by route sort of descriptions of the recommendations, including a map and the level of service. For the sake of time, I'm going to kind of skip those for now. We can go back and talk specific route, but I figured this group kind of cares more about everything else that went into it, like at a system level project direction. Okay, let's get going. There we go. Yeah, so we do a quick overview of the projects thus far, as well as what we heard for the last round of public engagement. So not the current comment form that's out, but when we had a survey on the proposed routes about a year ago. And then we spend like 5 or 6 slides just talking about all of the challenges to implementation to help kind of educate the public of why this isn't just a, flip a switch and get more service. We'll skip the updated network to the end, and then I'll go through some of the closing slides. Yeah. So for a project refresh, we had 4 goals for the project. We want to increase UCAT ridership and the overall transit mode share in Ulster County, make it a more compelling option for getting around. We want to develop recommendations that are adaptable to an electric fleet transition. We looked at embracing other mobility models like microtransit in Ulster County where it was appropriate. We ended up kind of splitting off that effort into something parallel that UCAT and UCTC pursued that we're planning around, but not directly recommending. And then finally, we wanted to look at a new technology platform for UCAT that can take on sort of an all-in-one, all different purposes. So scheduling, dispatching, ridership, and data tracking, the works. So yeah, we're about the end of the project timeline. We just did our last round of public meetings and a TAC meeting around the beginning of November. And we're just kind of in final comment collection and tightening up the last couple of tech memos to wrap out this project and this initiative. So about not quite a year ago, we were out public and we had some high level routes and 2 different scenarios for the public to respond to. These scenarios, we decided instead of saying, oh, here are 2 different routes with 2 wildly different alignments, a lot of the density and development in Ulster County, there's only so many ways you can connect, Saugerties to Kingston, right? We're not going to try and reinvent the wheel. So we decided for this scenario, we focus instead on how the service was distributed throughout the day. In scenario A, that's more similar to how UCAT operates today, of consistent all-day service, just a consistent frequency throughout the day, no variations by rush hour. In scenario B, we looked at, you know, if we put more service in kind of the traditional commuting time, so typically like 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and like 3 to 6 ballpark. If we put more service and more frequency at those times to keep things relatively cost neutral, we'd have to take out some service, be a little less frequent in other periods of day, perhaps end the service a little later in the evening. How would people respond? What did we want to hear from riders would be more useful to them? So for each of these routes that we presented, we asked them just their overall, what they think of the route, as well as if they prefer scenario A or scenario B for that route in particular. And respondents also had the opportunity to like drop a comment on a map and leave an open-ended response to help kind of, if they did like it, what did they like, or if they didn't, giving us more actionable feedback. So for how you felt about this route, it was just a rating scale from 0 to 100, a 0 being I don't like it at all, and a 100 being I love it. So we took all of the responses for each route and we got the average score. So for this column here, you can see that all of these average scores were 50 or higher, some of them barely over 50, but most of them getting higher, as high as, 83%, or sorry, an average score of 83. And we took that as, in general, people liked the alignments. More people were okay or in support of it than not. So we kind of took that as a mandate, if you will, of the alignments themselves, the destinations the routes are connecting, we're meeting the need. People could then identify which scenario they preferred, either scenario A, scenario B, or they had a third option to say, they didn't really care. Either scenario was sufficient. So we have here the percentage breakdown for each route in each scenario. And when you add up the results in scenario A or kind of the neutral third option, that becomes a pretty clear majority for all of the routes. So we also took that as a mandate, as people kind of mostly preferred what they have today, consistent all-day service, whether it's hourly or 2 hourly. That was more flexible for them than trying to get more peak hour at the expense of other elements. And then finally, we just got a total count of the number of map comments left for each route. The route we got the most comments on was Route 7, and there were a few that on Route 3, we didn't hear any.
And Jared,
What's Route
if I,
7?
yeah, which one is Route 7? What area does that serve?
That was the route that goes out to, that's the replacement for Route Z. Yeah. And so Route 7, the controversial part was pulling it out of Woodstock. And when I read the comments, it seemed people were kind of split. Some people loved the idea, if they lived in like Pine Hill or Phoenicia, of not having to do that big deviation to Woodstock anymore to save time. Some people in Woodstock, or some people wanted to go to Woodstock. So it was kind of a, equally controversial, but I think both sides had some supporters. So like I said, all the proposed routes got 50 or better. Again, just generally suggesting support. Same with scenario A, kind of winning the majority of support. And then for other comments we heard, the biggest thing is just additional destinations, including some that are areas not served by UCAT currently, and I think propose a lot of operational challenges. Some people wanted to go across into the county to the west to Margaretville. Some people were asking about serving the Amtrak station in Rhinecliff. Those are two of the most common destinations I can think of off the top of my head. So then we went through and we just kind of wanted to get public to understand why this plan is sort of medium term, if you will. I think we've been saying anywhere from like the 1 to 3 year implementation timeline. So the first thing we wanted to sort of acknowledge was a lot of the controversy or uncertainty about Kingston Plaza. So we made a point in the plan to identify multiple, what we're calling nodes, where multiple routes intersect and where a transfer could be possible. These nodes include SUNY Ulster, SUNY New Paltz, Development Court, and Garrigan Drive. We also still have a node in Uptown Kingston. For the sake of this project, we've been just saying Academy Green as a stakeholder, as a placeholder, as some sort of uptown transfer location. We still do believe that Kingston Plaza is a destination that should be served, and if a route is passing by it, there's no reason not to serve the plaza, but we really worked to minimize the number of routes that are starting or ending at the plaza so that people are less tempted to sort of loiter and wait there or try and catch a different bus. And so this is really just continuing the service changes UCAT made in September of moving more of the transfer need to development court. So we just tried to sort of continue that same approach, if you will. We did in the last year, we've been working with UCAT on doing runtime and scheduling considerations. So for some of the routes that were more kind of unique and different from existing service, we gave UCAT our estimates of stop-to-stop runtimes, and they sent out a bus to make sure that our assumptions about how quickly this trip could be completed were valid. We took that data and we went and sort of scheduled these routes out more robustly. Before we had just said hourly service between X and Y and left it at that. We took some time to develop draft timetables now so we could account for things like operator lunch breaks, or if this route's going to come to development court at this time, we should make sure another route is coming within a reasonable window to make that transfer possible. As we went through these kind of scheduling and runtime considerations, we did have to make some changes to the original routes just because we determined, oh, that one can't really make that full trip in an hour, so we need to make some adjustments. These recommendations still represent about a 27% increase in UCAT's total operating hours for fixed route transit. I think that number may go up a percentage point or two with the changes that we talked about last week, Brian. So as a result, this plan is not short-term. It's going to take time to acquire the additional manpower, acquire any additional vehicles that may be required. And so we really wanted to communicate that to the public of this is not a service change that's just going to happen overnight and kind of catch them by surprise. And at the same time, when the additional resources are become available and UCAT is ready to start implementing things, there's going to be additional public outreach and additional time for public comment. So while this is sort of the end for the perspective of this project, it's not the last time the public is going to see or comment on these potential routes. Some other sort of parallel efforts that were happening as a result of the route optimization plan. We did sort of a research memo under task 6 called Service Launch and Optimization. And this document outlined a lot of the industry best practices for 2 key areas when launching new service. The first is we documented a lot of best practices or potential options for marketing, education, and public communication. We have a big table that's documenting, different methods of outreach to the public, when they're effective, when they're not, and sort of laid the framework for UCAT and the county to work together and to develop your own community-specific public engagement plan of when we make X service change, we will do, public meetings within 30 days, or we will have the schedules ready within 60 days. Things like that. We don't go so far as to make those concrete recommendations, but we've set y'all up to make ones that are more appropriate and, for your community. The other half of the memo talks a lot about different performance monitoring metrics you can look at. So your ridership, your on-time performance, productivity measures of riders per hour, riders per mile. Again, provides a framework of metrics that UCAT could track and sort of how they should interpret them. If riders per mile is high, but riders per hour is low, what does that say about the route's operating speed or how it could be improved? The other tech memo that these are both on Participate Ulster, by the way, it's called Task 7, the System Technology Analysis and Recommendations. And this was, we use a sub-consultant who specializes in transit operating platforms. He did an inventory of different private sector providers who make who make programs for ridership tracking and scheduling and dispatching. And so he organized a lot of, totally blanking on the word. He organized a lot of sort of trial runs that UCAT staff was able to sit in on and see sort of the strengths and weaknesses of each platform. And he also did kind of an audit of the existing processes within UCAT, what's working and what's not working. The ultimate outcome of this memo was not just, UCAT should look for a technology platform that can do X, Y, and Z all within the same program, but actually provided sort of boilerplate language for what an RFP for that could entail. So whenever the county is ready to actually go out to get vendors to bid on a new technology platform, we include a very boilerplate RFP language for y'all to tweak as needed of what is needed. With that, like I mentioned, we're going to sort of gloss over the network for now, but just as overview, we provided a description of the route as well as a map with all of the major stops. Only the time points are labeled. We documented any major changes to the route since the public last saw it last year. And then we include a draft weekday schedule. These are not supposed to be like the absolute final, the bus will show up at this specific minute, but these were helped just to communicate this is what hourly service would look like. This is when you would probably slide in your operator lunch break, just to help give the public something a little more kind of substantial to look at. We have some system maps here. And yeah, just for one route in particular, we have the operating days, the frequency, the span, any major changes since we last went public, and then a draft timetable. These slides are all online, so we also have time. We can go back and talk through any of these routes in more detail. So then after we presented all of these routes, we talked about service in New Paltz, just because we don't have, at least currently, like a New Paltz dedicated shuttle. So we wanted to show people specifically how these routes overlapped in New Paltz and what that service looked like. We also touched on microtransit. The sort of final word on microtransit is that UCTC and UCAT decided to pursue a separate grant opportunity with NISDOT for microtransit zones in Ellenville, New Paltz, and Kingston. And our big concern here was we wanted to use these to complement the network without competing with the fixed route network. So using things like microtransit maybe for late night service or Sunday service, but you want to make sure if there's a microtransit zone in Kingston, it's not just like sapping riders from the local Kingston fixed route service. So that's the biggest thing I think when deciding when or where the microtransit should run is it's complementing and not competing. We also just wanted to remind people about there are other UCAT services that we kind of assumed would stay status quo. So that includes demand response and paratransit service that UCAT operates today, as well as the weekly shopper bus, which goes between different communities on different weekdays, as well as the nature bus. We realized we hadn't explicitly told people this before, so we want to just be clear. Hey, you know, these services are, we're assuming, still maintain the status quo. So for next steps, we provided some operating estimates here of just what this increase in service looks like. So the weekday vehicles at maximum service for the existing network is 11. We have 16. I think this might go up one more, Brian, when we do those final scheduling tweaks we discussed, as well as the daily weekday revenue hours for fixed route service, going from 169 in existing to 214 in the proposed, which that also represents that 27% increase that I mentioned at the start of the PowerPoint. And then finally, we just reminded people, you know, these are not immediate service changes that are rolling out next month. They still require more time for hiring, acquiring vehicles, doing the final scheduling, elements like that, but that this is our last opportunity to collect feedback as part of this study. So we have an open-ended comment feedback form. You know, we didn't want to lead the question or lead people to a certain response by asking too many questions. And that will be open through December 7th, which I believe is the Sunday of next week. So a week from this Sunday. And yeah, I know I just kind of sped run through that. Happy to answer any questions or go back to specific routes.
Thanks, Jared. Much appreciated. Any questions from any of the council members?
Do you have ideas about where you might get the funding if you're going to pursue?
We believe that
We do.
you're talking about the microtransit funding?
No,
No,
just the system, the 27% system increase.
So we're already seeing some response from the administration relative to driver needs. And to understand how long it takes to procure buses. It's for some of these buses, it's 2 years. For some of the other buses, it's 1 year. So we have to, you know, you're thinking of those types of things in terms of time frame. But from a funding standpoint, the county has decided that it will contribute 25% of its increases in lodging tax to transit. So the funding levels are, I think, highly likely to occur. I guess I would say,
Great.
highly likely to occur. I would also note that, from our perspective, transit is a key consideration relative to some of the climate change initiatives that the county is working on. It's also a key consideration with respect to land use issues, key consideration to serve underserved communities and populations, to get them to doctors and shopping trips, et cetera. And then last but not least is it is a considerable commitment of dollars. So the reason for this study is not just that, we want to do a more sustainable system, is also in fact that we have specific service needs that we want to accomplish. And we also want to make sure that we're spending both federal and state dollars wisely in terms of providing that service.
So do you think then you could be like building this out, kind of going in this direction in like 5 years from now?
Yeah, we've set an internal horizon date of 3 years.
Nice.
The main hurdle from my perspective is hiring. If we need more drivers, it's already, we're in a very difficult environment for finding reliable full-time drivers for UCAT.
And Jared said this in some of the other presentations, it's not just Ulster County that faces that problem. It's
Yeah.
nationwide.
Yeah.
That problem is facing it.
And there is a build out for rolling stock acquisition at this point.
I mean, we have some capital needs associated with this that is not just in terms of operating costs. You also have some significant capital costs in terms of the number of buses on the road.
Right.
6 or 7 new buses on the road is increased capital costs. Those capital costs are not insignificant. We also have, quite frankly, other capital needs, not the least of which is that we don't have enough space in our garage facilities to meet that. And so we're looking at another center somewhere in the county to essentially take some of the burden off of our existing garage facilities, which just can't park the number of buses that we have now, let alone add buses to it. Yeah.
Very impressive.
We really appreciate Jared's effort in sticking with us. This has been a multi-year effort. And we've definitely thrown some curveballs at Jared and Foursquare along that path to get us here. So we're pretty confident with the results. And I should add, we also asked Jared and his crew to consider a phasing plan. So what would a gradual implementation of this plan look like? What are logistically, how would we be able to do that? And as usual, they put together a pretty creative chart that would help us think this through strategically over a period of time. So I don't want to speak on behalf of the county executive, but I know we're considering certain components of the plan phasing in, and then actually sooner rather than later.
That's the short of it, really.
Right.
You know, we're looking at, because we did make some service changes in September that partially were to improve the reliability of service, because we were canceling a lot of routes because we didn't have driver coverage. So we were able to kind of streamline certain routes. We also had to move our transfer point out of the Kingston Plaza, as Jared talked about. But that resulted in a wave of comments separate from the route optimization plan comments that really kind of get to some of the service needs and how some of those were disrupted. So we're trying to look at both the kind of big plan for the route optimization plan implementation and also things we want to address from changes that happened in September. So we're trying to kind of merge those two things together right now.
And there were some really highly granular comments on where routes should go. And some of that has to do with people with special needs, So one of the things that we hope happens is that the 5310 program can essentially, which is elderly for those folks online, it's elderly and disabled, can somehow meet some of those needs. So the county's in the process of preparing an application for 5310 as well. Yeah. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jared. Much appreciated. And I remind everyone that the comment period remains open to December 7th.
That's right. And you can point folks to Participate Ulster. All the project information is linked through Participate Ulster. Thanks, Jared.
Thanks, Jared.
Happy
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. You're welcome to stay on for the rest of the meeting if you have the time.
So
Happy
moving
Thanksgiving,
back
y'all.
on our- Thanks, Jared. Moving back on our agenda, new business under A, resolution number 2025-13, support for New York State Department of Transportation targets for safety and performance. Brian, why don't we do this? We'll take a motion afterwards.
Sure. I would just point out that this is not a time sensitive resolution. We can postpone this until the February meeting.
Why don't we do
Since
that?
we lost Mary Beth
Yeah.
and we do not have a quorum at this point.
That's great.
I would just propose we do that.
So does anyone on the call want to hear about these performance measures, or do you would want to wait till February? If you want to hear about it, vote yes now.
I think we heard about it last week.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna move on to other old business. It's item 6 on your agenda. We did discuss the Transportation Alternatives Program. The long-range transportation plan we have discussed before.
May I, Dennis, actually, I have a few updates.
Sure.
So the long range transportation plan, of course, was approved in September, and we appreciate everyone's support of that. The project, however, is not complete. We have a stylized version of the plan, was delivered a couple of weeks ago. I have not posted it online or announced it yet. I have a copy of it here because the final step is to make it fully ADA accessible to people with vision and hearing disabilities. And so that requires creating alternative text explanations for images that are included. And that should be complete. I expect to have it delivered today by our consultant. So once I have the fully accessible document, we will post that on our webpage and make a small announcement to folks so that it's available. But they did a very good job. That was with assistance from Transpo ITP. And we are also finalizing what is essentially an executive summary that will be a fully online version of the document. So you can fly through the document just on the web if that's your preference.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions from the council members? Hearing none. UCTC obligation report. Chris, is that you?
Yeah, we have the obligation report not posted online just yet, but for the projects and the money that was obligated for the fiscal year 2025, there was a total of $21.4 million from FHWA for local and state highway, bridge, trail projects and whatnot. Of that 21.4 million, 19.6 in federal aid was obligated for state projects, and the remaining 1.1 million was obligated for local highway, bridge enhancement projects. Then finally, 756,000 and change for transit project, which I believe was just the CMRR. We'll get that up with the narrative. I'm not sure.
As soon as it's ready.
Yeah. That doesn't have to be approved.
No, it does not.
Okay, thank you.
For information purposes.
Any questions on that? Sandra, do you have anything you wanted to add or not?
No, you guys work with Nicole on those numbers, right? I think if anything, I might recommend that Orange County reach out to you folks. They have new staff, relatively new staff, I guess. And it might be helpful for them to understand how you do it. If you don't mind if I do that.
Oh, I don't mind at all. Every MPO does it differently. When I first started, I was really trying to put the puzzle together myself, and I'm happy to. We'll be happy to offer any insight we have.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, because if we get questions, we don't necessarily do it. We provide the information, but we don't necessarily distill the information. So good. Thank you, guys.
And then the next item on the agenda is always the fun item. It's 2026 Unified Planning Work Program, call for planning projects.
Yes.
Brian.
You should have received our announcement that included the other items like TAP and the route optimization plan. we have opened the call for planning project proposals. So the Unified Planning Work Program is the arm of the MPO that allows us to do all the great planning work that we do over the course of a year. So that can be discrete planning studies where we hire a consultant, or it can be efforts that Chris, Dennis, and I put our energy and effort toward fully inside the office. So if you have a transportation issue of concern that you feel merits further investigation and study, please consider submitting a proposal through the Unified Planning Work Program. We can only fund planning with this federal aid fund source. So it cannot go to preliminary engineering. It cannot go to or detailed engineering or right-of-way investigation, right-of-way incidentals. It has to be for planning, and obviously not for capital acquisition either.
But we can do environmental reports associated with the planning project. And Sandra, we want to explain that for us?
You're talking about the,
Health?
yeah, PELs.
Yeah.
Yeah, planning environmental linkage. Yeah, so basically, PELs is essentially saying like, because I'm very familiar with your planning process that you folks do. And they're excellent. I mean, as far as your public outreach goes and the technical support that you get. What the PEL does though is it increases, or in most cases, the level of coordination that you would do with the environmental agencies. All right, which I think in Ulster County is because you have the watershed and all this. So you would do a little bit. So let's say, I know you guys often form steering committees. So you would try to, you know, rather than just having your traditional transportation partners on the committees, you'd also try to get some environmental representation. Then at that point, as you're going through concepts and evaluating them, any of the work that you do with the environmental agencies, as far as maybe looking at a concept and deciding whether or not it's something that you would want to discard, you know, or continue into engineering. Once you get into engineering, those decisions and that work stands and you don't have to redo it. So basically, it's to help the future project phases so that you can drop alternatives earlier. And you're basically saying, you know, we looked at this concept and it was a no-go for environmental purposes. Then when you go into preliminary engineering, you don't have to reevaluate that concept and spend money again. You can say, no, it was already looked at, it's a no-go.
Thank you, Sandra.
Does that help?
Yes,
Okay.
greatly.
Oh.
And we have deadlines?
Yes, I believe it's December 7th. No, it's actually a week after December 7th. I extended it. I should note that the period of time that NPOs statewide have to assemble their Unified Planning Work Program has shrunken significantly. We used to start this process in October and November, with the understanding that we had to have an approved UPWP by March 31st. And a big component of that is guidance from New York State DOT central office provided, which tells us what our funding levels are, what the focus areas need to be, and other components that are required of each NPO's UPWP. We still have not received that guidance to date. I would expect to receive it very shortly. But there's some potentially critical information in that guidance that may affect the amount of dollars available or the areas that we need to focus on. And then on the other side of that, we have been asked to have an approved UPWP no later than February 28th, so that our central office partners at DOT have sufficient time to review and approve that internally before forwarding to the Federal Highway Administration. So the period of time that we have to complete this document, which is a very significant effort, continues to shrink. So I would just point that out, that we have quite a bit of information to compile and assemble in a short period of time. But we'll endeavor to do that so that we can meet those schedules for a technical committee review in January in a policy committee review in February.
Thank you, Brian. And if anyone has anything that they want to propose, I would suggest that you reach out to UCTC staff, myself and Brian and Chris. Do an informal conversation about it before you take the time to submit a formal proposal.
Right.
And I also don't think that every study really warrants a Pell. You know, we're very selective back at the state on which ones we think are Pell and which ones are not. So just something to really, you know, they seem to kind of present themselves, right? Like they'll be in a corridor that you know has a lot of environmental concerns and it kind of becomes a no-brainer. But I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
The deadline was end of business on Friday, the 12th.
Thank you.
Thank you. So to hear that deadline, it's Friday the 12th, if anybody is looking for that deadline. Anything else on Unified Planning Work Program? Any questions from the council members? Traffic Safety Board, Brian?
Yes, the Traffic Safety Board purchased 1,000 reflective high-vis vests for a giveaway. That was very successful. The previous year in 24, we purchased 350 and they went in a day. These lasted more than a day. We had them made available at multiple locations throughout Ulster County. We have just a few remaining here. We also provided small batches to groups and agencies like Family of Woodstock, Ulster County Department of Social Services for our temporary emergency housing clients, as well as police departments throughout the county, so that officers on the beat, if they see someone in a unsafe situation after dark, they could provide them with a vest if they're walking on the highway.
Unfortunately, we don't have any more to give out, so.
We have a few here,
Yeah.
but it's not a large number and they're all extra large. So.
What's wrong with that?
Right. So, we appreciate everyone's assistance, especially partnering with the county executive's office, every year with this giveaway. That really helps us get the word out and coordinate the, logistics.
Other project updates, Brian?
The only update that I have that I want to announce that I think is important to note, we did have elections this year. And those elections do impact our municipalities. By my count, we're going to have 6 new voting members at UCTC beginning January 1. That's town of Ulster, the village of New Paltz, town of Warsing, town of Kingston, town of Esopus, and our 7 is 1 membership. Rich Parody already reached out to me and is ready to step in to replace Mary Beth Majestic for the 7 as 1 voting membership.
So what we're planning on doing is doing an MPO 101 for the new supervisors, and actually for anyone. And we'll schedule that in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that will be part of our January technical committee.
Lloyd also.
Town of Lloyd is not one of our current voting members. We
But
do.
they will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a whole nother batch for the next 2 years. It's gonna create a challenge for us, as we saw today. This is in my 14 years in this position. This is the first time we did not have a quorum at a policy committee meeting. So I apologize for that.
It's a holiday week though.
Yeah.
It's-
Well,
But we've got it.
we always have November meetings though, before Thanksgiving. It's just where they end up. So we appreciate everyone for coming out to this meeting, and we'll make sure we put in some extra efforts in the new year to make sure we get folks back on
I
board.
would suggest those other towns, if you're gonna have an MPO 101, you should invite them because
Yep.
they need to know about this on day one, not
Right.
a year from now when they're a
Mhm.
voting member.
Well, we have a coordinated notification system
Mhm.
where we do a direct mailing to the high selected official, and I follow up with direct contact, phone call and email to them to let them know.
Excellent.
So I'll be doing that.
Is the 101 gonna be part of one of your standing meetings or separate?
We haven't decided, but I think what we can do is, let's see.
Yeah,
How
okay.
that
Yeah.
works. It depends on the, I don't want to do a 101. We may do it prior to this meeting.
Right.
I don't want to do it as part of the meeting.
That's
Because-
good, yeah.
There's a lot of information to cover.
Yeah.
Even the condensed version can take close to an hour.
I know.
What do you focus on too?
Right.
You know, how to make it most beneficial to our members. So it's something to consider. But yeah, we've done it as a earlier meeting.
Yeah.
Set the official start an hour later. We have options.
And then one of the other project updates is Albany Avenue. Brian, you want to go over that?
Yeah, a request for proposals has been issued for the Albany and Ulster Ave Corridor Management Plan. So that is currently open with a deadline later in December. We're getting inquiries from consultant agencies. And we appreciate, we had a really productive meeting with the project sponsors, Town of Ulster, City of Kingston, and New York State DOT, not a sponsor, but they're partners rather, with a lot of really good input from DOT. So we're looking forward to getting that project underway in 2026.
Thank you, Brian. Any other project updates?
So how many towns can I proxy for at the same time?
Yeah, no. We do weighted votes. Just question.
Yeah, thank you.
But we welcome the inquiry and we'll look into that for you. Thanks for your support.
But you know, that's something, I mean, I'm sure you will cover in 101, but every town should have at least one proxy.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of them don't.
I don't disagree. Yeah, don't disagree. Any other project updates, Brian?
No, that's all I have.
So the next meeting of the Transportation Council Technical Committee will take place on January 27th, 2026. We look forward to seeing you all at that meeting, and everyone have a great holiday and an enjoyable
Yes.
Thanksgiving as well.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, everyone.
If anybody wants to give us cooking tips, please send the recipes to Dennis at my email address. I'll be happy to take them under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you.